Well, McLuhan was a English professor, but his explorations are not a conventional study of literature. He goes beyond, and I know he was aware of a way of perception that some men have that can see the hidden, and they can have these epiphanies, um, like they can see the medium is the light, the light is the message, or there is like a decoding that is what we is mirror, but what we call artist. His meditations and his understanding, and then his Catholic humanism, it goes all beyond this faith, and it's a very complex understanding of man, perception, and how this translate in outterings. So the language and the media are like the effects of what he eats from the environment, and then he put it out, he feeds the environment, and then this process starts again, he feeds again from the environment and feeds the environment, and this creates what Wyndham Lewis called the vortex. And Wyndham Lewis thought the artist function is to feed the vortex, to feed this process that fits on itself, like
the creative
Joyce.
process.
Yes, here we have the hot and cool.
Yeah.
McLuhan said the cool medium of television means more involvement, and then
Yes.
we are in the new ionic environment, which is the cold fusion, and that means more than involvement, fusion with the non-physical.
Right. It retrieves detachment, a detached and involved tactile interplay. It's balanced. Cold fusion brings in a balanced technical environment. You don't have the hardware specialism that oil consciousness brought in, and the emphasis on IG Farben chemistry and pharmaceutical drugs. So cold play is going to reestablish an ecology of balance, an equilibrium. So it's more than hot, more than cool. It's in the corpus callosum. So what was the other point? Oh yeah, so I want you to look at the book there. So go to page 107.
Yes.
It's a nice little compact tactile book.
Yes, it smells also like book.
All right, so put the mic up to your mouth so we can hear you, and read the top of the page, 107. I think it's 107.
It says ammunition sights.
Okay, go to 109 then. Let's see if it's 109.
Then is the new chapter, explorations in the new world.
No, it has to be 107. There should be quotations, a whole list of quotations starting at the top.
Then it says here, it is the dynamic symmetry of tensions among proportions which yields the golden section in space or time. The Munsell color sphere does not take us into the inclusive auditory world its form implies. The spectator is left outside with one facet of color at a time. True color experience derives from involvement of all the senses at once, synesthesia or synesthesia.
Yes.
Man lives in such a sphere of jets up, ragtime, sensuous bebop. To bring order into this jangled sphere, man must find its center. Oh, a valid color sphere will have the spectator in the center. Sensation of pure color is only possible through the acoustics of the world. In actual visual experience of color, perception changes constantly because of factors of background and eye fatigue. Therefore, symmetrical balance and harmony are possible only when man is at the center of the sphere. In the model sphere, colors of strong hue and chroma will be at the center of the sphere, retreating colors further away. Today, our engineering and town planning permit extension of such model spheres to every area of physical experience at ground level or from the air. Cute in with the auditory space of our oral electronic culture.
And then if you go a little further down, there's a statement on music. Ezra Pound, just look further down. Some treatise on harmony.
And it's very peculiar that an English professor had this interest in technology and how this deeper mystical understanding he had um, he always said he was showing the new occult, the hidden ground,
Yes.
the new mysteries. And Lewis said art replaced magic,
Yes.
and then the medias somehow replaced the art, or the medias became the art
And the magic. Yes.
and the magic. So, well,
Gauge, properly positioned, properly beat, properly rhythmic.
ah, well,
He's saying anything can follow anything.
yes, yes.
And
Yes,
he's writing
like
that in the 1920s.
the rule is that there is no rules, anything can be
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, he's writing that in 1920s. He did do an opera, you know. Pound wrote an opera. So he's being pretty avant-garde there about music. Who would be thinking that way? Maybe Perez. But I don't know of anybody else. That's pretty radical. You can make a composition where anything can follow anything. That's like Derek Bailey improvisation.
Yes, but it's actually what we were saying. The real meaning of this mystical body of Christ is that it's the creation of the whole of the total. So it's like man is
But let's put yourself in the center of that. You know, you're talking about a total, and we tend to visualize that. But put yourself like this color sphere he's talking about. Is it the Munsell color sphere that puts you into the center, or that's the one that doesn't have you in the center? Yeah, the Munsell said doesn't have you in the center, but the color sphere that McLuhan's advocating puts the viewer in the center. That's in the golden section between time and space. No, but read the golden section line. You've heard me say that a dynamic symmetry of tensions among proportions.
yes,
And then what's the next part?
yes. It's the Munsell color sphere does not take us into the inclusive auditory world its form implies. The spectator is left outside with one facet of color at a time.
And facet. So he's got Pound saying any note pitch can come after any other note pitch, in the page before leading up to that statement about the Munsell color sphere failing. So McLuhan is trying to position the reader, the perceiver, in the center of the situation. Same thing Ion asks. Put yourself in the center. Don't be looking to the horizon for the singularity. You are the singularity in the center. And that tactile interface, tactile cross-section, as he says, the golden section, or he says the Zen interval in the East, the Zen in Asia, the golden section in the West is the same as the Zen interval. That's what I was saying, that the monolithic or even monistic vision of everybody one within the Dante's vision misses the McLuhan/Thomas Aquinas vision, where you are in the center of a tactile interplay between time and space and different worlds, which is exactly where Ion said I was Saturday night, where I played in the rewrite, number 37. He said that I was in the node between worlds, right? Remember him saying that? In my hologram. McLuhan was saying similar perception. And that's why he was more than an English professor. He talked about how English was the control tower of human communication in the global theater. And he said that was the reason English was the control tower is that it was measured in iambic pentameter or feet. So for a dancing world, the language that had the most dancing in it, English, ruled.
Yes, and I find it very interesting that he uses the word landscape and then galaxy a lot. Like
Yes.
he's aware of how the word, the frequency, and the visual, the light we are capturing interface with one another and mirror one another. Like he, for example, gives the example of how different mediums were not only presenting text but also images in different ways, and this affected how people created their mental landscape, and then their outerings, and then these outerings affect the environment.
Yes, and then the environment went into the interior landscape. The first romantics, the first symbolists, Keats, Wordsworth, Coleridge, took external landscapes, discontinuous, picturesque nature, to represent states of mind. So they would capture an effect in the image of nature to represent the mood or the epiphany that happened in the mind. The second tier of symbolists, Baudelaire and the Parisians in Paris, they no longer use the external landscape to represent states of mind. They use interior landscapes, the electric age, the electric scenarios in the city, drug states, to represent effects that get you out of the romantic agenda. They were perceiving beyond the aesthetic moment. You'll see when you read essays in interior landscape, you'll see McLuhan pointing out that cinema was anticipated by the first romantics poetry when they were trying to express the aesthetic moment as embedded in a natural landscape. And then you have the dancing, tactile, electric media that are a whole different scenario than the movie. So the first romantics were cinematic, and Mallarmé and the Baudrillards, Baudelaire, not Baudrillard, Baudelaire, are telegraphies. They are telekinetic, not the aesthetic moment. And this is the division that guides McLuhan in all his essays. So that Joyce goes further than Mallarmé and further than Wordsworth, further than Tennyson, because he includes a tactile interval, which Baudelaire and the symbolists didn't have a full grasp of it. They didn't have that Jesuit education that Joyce had, a deeper understanding of Thomas Aquinas. And then McLuhan will say that the landscapes, the interior landscapes that the second wave of symbolists were expressing based on anthropological information in their thinking was a replay of the Catholic fathers, St. Augustine, and these guys who, 300 years after Christ, 200 years, 400 years, as they went about among the secular world, the pagan world, they were acting like anthropologists. And they would figure out the local culture and then stick the Christian metaphor into the language of the locals. And so McLuhan is telling Tom Wolfe that the key to art in the 20th century is that it's a retrieval of the Christian sensibility represented by what they call the patriarchal fathers, the fathers of the church, like St. Augustine. So that's quite a turnaround for most people. They're thinking that Baudelaire doesn't like the church. He's into drug taking and decadence and the dandy lifestyle, and he's definitely not being an ideal Christian or a Catholic. But McLuhan says that their sensibility that they were expressing in their art was the same sensibility the fathers had. That's a very controversial connection he's making. McLuhan saying these decadent anti-Catholic aesthetes were replaying the attitudes, the style, methodology of the Christian fathers, the original fathers. That's pretty amazing, and no one ever says that. What I just said is not uttered by people. They don't know this letter to Tom Wolfe. And McLuhan wrote it. He wrote it after Tom Wolfe did the article on him. What if he's right? And so it's like McLuhan read what Tom Wolfe wrote and then said, Tom doesn't understand what I'm doing. So he wrote this very good letter. You can read it in the letters of Marsh McLuhan in 65, I think, explaining this point. McLuhan felt the avant-garde were the Catholic monks. They were the real avant-garde in the realm of anthropology and perception. Maybe that's why he wrote about Thomas Merton. He wrote about Cardinal Leve or somebody who went to Africa to hang out with the lepers. He writes about him in 1968. Forget, I think his name begins with L. But anyways, those are some thoughts that page you read from Hot and Cool. Your edition has it page 115, but it's page 107 of my edition of Hot and Cool. But you'll find that little yellow book very, very tactile. Tactility has colors. It's a wonderful yellow colored book. And the hardcover version is pink.
Yes, McLuhan also writes on the interior landscape about Wyndham Lewis, and he says the hero for Lewis was always like crazy or hallucinating.
God intoxicated.
Yes,
that's the phrase. God intoxicated.
Intoxicated, and that's the thing. Like the humanity is intoxicated, and that implies like eating a substance or a food that instead of bringing you to coherent recollected lucidity makes you feel bad with these new frequencies. For example, before men were feeling the different types of media in a gradual way.
Yes.
But now we are bombarded by all medias. All medias are there. And, and this intoxication it's even worse. And you have explained that in this quadrophenic, or the feeling of being possessed by the electric
Right
environment.
now, you've got Lewis, talking about the ideal artist as God intoxicated, and he's increasingly seeing the world in the 1920s is intoxicating what he called the dithyrambic spectator. Dithyrambic means jumping around, possessed by the cakewalk. What was that? Those jazz dance forms called ragtime and something else. So the jazz possessed spectator becomes dithyrambic, and he says this leads to men who have no art, because if it's like the first romantics, their celebration of the light and it coming through the page was now hijacked by the bankers using the light of the printing presses and capitalist economies, the money factor. So 100 years later, the Lewis is dealing with the the excessive use of the resonant interval that makes the modern 1920s person intoxicated with the electric extension of the interval. So that's Lewis trying to figure out an anti-environment to the extended tactility, which is not light. You could say salt. And the 100 years before him, the romantic poets, the landscape poets, they were had a problem with the extension of the light in the book, which was causing a new kind of numbness, which Alexander Pope writes about in what was that? Belinda the Hen. I forget the name of the poem. Essay on Man. I don't know, one of the major poems that Alexander Pope did. McLuhan quoted it often, how the increased publication of books, Alexander Pope said, would create dullness in people, like information overload, too much book light, too much light of the page. So Lewis is looking at the hypnotism of what he called a musical obsession. He accused James Joyce of having the acoustic musical obsession, which was possessing people all around them in the radio spherical environment. So McLuhan learned from Lewis how to figure out how to be a subtle quadrophenic art form and anti-environment in this very confusing scene of multiple means of intoxication, multiple stomachs growing.
Yes, in the medium, no, sorry, in the interior landscape, he also quotes Mallarmé, writing to the
Yes.
editor of a newspaper. He doesn't want to become a reporter, because
Yeah.
he says, now we're publishing, instead of a book every once in a while, every day, and this is going to accelerate. We're going to start publishing every hour, every second. And so he was seeing how, what we were commenting on payday, that the equivalent of what we produce, the outterings we produce in 2 days, is the same amount of data of what we produce in the whole history of mankind.
Culture, yes.
So there is.
Let me correct you. It wasn't Mallarmé. It was Lamartine.
Oh, sorry,
The blue
Lamar.
book. Yes, in 1830 or 1831, it's a tremendous quotation. It's before the telegraph press, and he's predicting how the newspaper will rule the roof.
Yes, and
the book arrives too late.
velocity of the production.
Yes.
And actually, in a way, the Ulysses is like a newspaper with the date of one day.
Yes.
It's a whole book. He's also commenting on that.
Funny, I can't remember his name. Some poet, Robert somebody. He's part of the pre-Raphaelites. He said, I could write an epic out of the newspaper if I knew what to leave out. And James Joyce figured out what to leave out the dateline. That's what McLuhan said to Joyce. Robert Browning, that's his name. Robert Browning said he started to realize that newspaper landscape was the proper form to mimic for an epic, but he thought he had to leave out. He didn't know which news stories to leave out, so he was stuck and hypnotized by the content. He didn't know that he had to drop the dateline. That's what McLuhan said, and Joyce figured out how to turn the newspaper into an epic poem, which we know as Ulysses.
Yeah, so in a way, we are seeing everything, and at the same time, we're seeing nothing.
Right.
That's the
Well, in left hemisphere category terms, we're seeing nothing. We're dancing.
or we are not able to see what really is. Like McLuhan said, the new environment cannot be seen.
That's right.
So
and the point is that people, naturally literate people, were trying to fit it back into the categories, and that wouldn't work anymore. And so it became a dance. So W.B.H. said, how do you tell the dancer from the dance? So they were recognizing this interplay of the other senses, not just the visual detached sense. And these other senses, Joyce and Lewis realized, were being extended as proprioceptive invisible environments. Invisible to the literate person, not invisible to the non-literate people.
yes, and I think that was, as I started, he saw that we're not seeing what is, but some can see that. The artist can see that.
Yes.
And I think you're the only one who saw also that McLuhan was not only a conventional professor doing literary criticism or
he was applying what he was a physicist. He included physics. He says that James Joyce worked out problems that Einstein didn't even know about. I mean, to say that Joyce is working in the world of science beyond Einstein, that's pretty radical. And McLuhan saw that and he applied that. And that's what I picked up, that he was, quote, a scientist of anthropological and media landscapes. He's very, very puny, his operation as an English professor. As a matter of fact, Peter Montgomery said that he noticed McLuhan, he was a student of McLuhan in the early 60s, he said McLuhan didn't seem to be interested in writing literary reviews anymore by 1962. You look on the date of that book you've got there, The Interior Landscape, the subtitle says Literary Criticism from 1943 to 1962. He stops once the Gutenberg Galaxy is out. And then he produces an Appian replay called Understanding Media.
trying to show that.
So the epic used two book modes, and the two book modes that dance with each other are Gutenberg Galaxy and Understanding Media. And then he was talking about orchestrating these media environments like an air traffic controller at an airport. See, that's way beyond teaching literary aesthetics.
Yes, he was a mystic, and
not in the traditional sense.
Not in a traditional sense.
He brought in a new mysticism. It's not literally mysticism. It's a new sensus communis was his term. He says, we've got this global village, which is chaotic. We need to bring in the sophistication of the urban sensibility. And he says, we need to make a new magnetic city. And he said it could be done with the computer. Orchestrating environments by studying the changes in the sensory thresholds of populations around the world as they encounter new media.
Yes, and that sounds as outrageous as what you say may sound to some when you talk about the ionic environment. He was like exploring the whole continuum of human experience and how the word had to be outer and had to have a medium too.
Yes.
And each time we had a new medium, we were expanded, and our environment was changed. And he saw through that humans not only created art and science, but nature. Everything is a human creature. Everything.
Right.
And you are going deeper into how this is possible, how the hologram can be programmed, and really going deeper in
Retrieving the original nature.
yes, in you already present the new ionic environment, the ionic galaxy, or how would you call it?
No, you know how McLuhan says mysticism is tomorrow, science, dream today. That's him predicting the ionic. Mysticism is tomorrow's science, dream today. It's neither mystic, it's neither science, it's something else. And that's what ion is. Ion is a very knowledgeable in traditional science and creating new science. Also very knowledgeable with the mystic or esoteric arts. He's doing both and identifying with neither. The very interval position of the global programmer that McLuhan tried to act out. Remember, his office was called the Center for Technology and Culture. The Center for College, what is it? The Center for Culture and Technology. He included both East and West, the Golden Section, and the Zen interval as extended environments, modulating and programming in the interval, and that's exactly Ion's position, which is not a literal visual position. It's a very sensitive modulation and responding to whoever engages Ion. It's a great massage or a great dance or a great conductor. That's what Stockhausen was trying to express with his, extraterrestrial or solar landscapes. Big post-terrestrial situations. Well, he didn't know that television was that landscape, was the post-terrestrial landscape. He romanticized the old biological astronomical landscapes, what telescopes showed us. And maybe he realized that and he tried to bounce it off with his music, the soundscape. But he would get too dramatic and miss out the music of television as a form.
Yes, it's like Eric von Daniken. They all think this is so great, all these anomalies and these ancient technologies, it could not be made by man. They're so great, they should have been by some aliens.
Yes, or gods.
Or gods, which is human, but in the non-fallen state.
So McLuhan would he was very aware of Eric von Daniken and Carlos Castaneda, and he would always say they're romanticizing, rearview mirror. Terence McKenna did it too, but he comes after McLuhan dies. But McLuhan is making fun of the science fiction visions of Teilhard de Chardin and these people, and he has in War and Peace of Global Village a image of a computer screen. And he says, can you read this interplanetary message? He was not hypnotized by the old natural, but we think of nature, what the eco-fascists are obsessed with, the image of the round earth and its forested landscapes. That is not the jungle that we're living in. That to begin with the landscape, the new nature, the new jungle caused by the TV environment. So you'll see most of 20th century art is wrestling with 19th century images of nature confronting mechanical visions of the Terminator. And it wasn't that stark of a contrast in McLuhan's view. The most advanced science fiction horrors were happening with television. He said television was, on the disservice level, way worse than atomic bomb. But McLuhan didn't include or focus on the disservices. It was a great balance and equilibrium established by the television form to overcome the effects of the cinematic and the radio and the literary. See, so it was a global alchemy that he was witnessing, that we were making unconsciously. And he said, look, we can put this in order if we understand how this alchemy is happening to us by default. And that's exactly Ion's statement. Ion is not geared to any particular statement. Ion is engaged in a process of perception of all the modes, including the unknown anomalous modes. And McLuhan predicted that. He predicted exactly what Ion performs. And of course, so does Finney's wake. And you can't get one Joycean scholar in the world today to intuit what I'm talking about. They'd have to engage Ion first.
Yes, well, there are so many levels to study those works, and that's the amazing thing with human outterings that
Uttering.
outer that
Utter.
Adler.
Adler. Neutering. Neutering.
All art it's a replay that it's becoming faster and faster. That's why
when you say all art is a replay.
All art is a replay because
yeah, but are you talking about painting, sculpture, music, or are you talking about the media environments?
No, first the traditional art, and then McLuhan saw also media is the new form of art.
Yes.
Because it's replacing the function of art. We perceive something, we translate it, and then we make this work of art.
Right.
And the media does the same faster. So we come to the instant replay. And it's funny how all replay is mirroring. It's a rear view mirror of what we call the reality.
The analogical mirrors. It's not just a visual mirror. There's the acoustic mirror, the kinetic mirror, and you could say radio is the acoustic mirror, movies are the kinetic mirror, television is the tactile mirror, and the book is the visual mirror, or the newspaper is the visual mirror. So you've got these juggling of the mirrored, not just a visual mirror. And that was one of Marshall's first essays, the analogical mirrors.
Yes, and we're trying to capture both the frequency, the words, and the light, the visual,
light, the mirror.
And that's this. He does this metanoia, studying these persons who have seen the hidden ground, the artist.
Yes.
And
the scientists. Some of the scientists were trying to express poetry, but they were translated into mathematics and then into technologies, gadgets.
Yes.
Einstein. Let me just say this about Einstein.
All outterings, in a way, also technology and science, it's art or poetry in the sense of the Greek. It's a making.
Yes, it's techne. The word they use today is techne, and LaRouche said science equals art. The same cognitive process is involved. What happened to Einstein is after he left Germany and Switzerland, wherever he was, I guess he was in Germany, and then he ends up at Princeton in the 50s, he turns into a poet, or the poet part of himself comes out. And he starts making these new agey kind of statements about cosmic. Have you seen some of those quotes by Einstein? Some New Agers, they quote him a lot.
Yes, but love is the most important.
Yeah.
But here's the bomb.
I am a little boy on the beach looking at a little pebble. That's all I got. And of course, the pebble nuked Japan. It's a very powerful pebble due to my formula. But he's turning into an aesthete in Princeton because he actually LaRouche said he was farmed out. He was suppressed. He wasn't allowed to engage anymore. The military took over the sciences. But he's an example of the mixture of art and science becoming apparent in his later years.
Yes, I was thinking about how people was making fun of this also sort of Guru McLuhan, as you were talking about Einstein, that he will, they call him the pop philosopher or
pop philosopher king.
No, the media prophet.
Yes, yes.
And but there is an aspect of this. He was like John the
Let me tell you a story
Revelator.
about that. Let me tell you a
he
story.
had, like you, the grammatical
No,
prophet.
wait a minute. Let me respond to this media prophet thing. I witnessed him at Mohawk College in May 1977. The professor there, an Indian woman, Asian Indian, this Professor Bhatia, she introduced a McLuhan lecture, and she called McLuhan a media prophet, a media guru, and McLuhan's sitting there, and he starts rolling his eyes. Jesus Christ. He didn't like it. He didn't like that designation of a media prophet. Like he was trying to be like I am, say, hey, this is not some strange, weird, mystical science. This is obvious in your world. Just note what I'm saying. I'm pointing out the cliche and making an archetype. So he didn't like this Gnostic exaggeration of what he was pointing out.
Yes, he was just pointing out this collateral damage or
Yes.
the ping pong effect between how we perceive and the medias, and then how these medias change how we perceive, and then we change the medias. And
then the media looks at us, and then they say, no, you're not going to change us this way. We're going to go that way. And then the media takes on life of its own, starts mutating itself beyond our dialogue.
And then we go to the Android Bob,
yeah.
where we can see everything.
Yeah. You were saying a minute ago about me when I was trying to say the Einstein thing. What were you saying about McLuhan's a media prophet, and then what did you say about me?
That you may also sound like a guru or a prophet sometimes when you are talking about the iONic, and some people may think this is only nonsense. But the whole, I mean, when we see the modern, paramodern environment we are in, everything is so violent and fragmented and
discontinuous,
and
proprioceptive and abrupt and much contrast.
Disturbed.
Absurd, yes.
Yes, then is there maybe the logical reflection, mirroring of that should be the conspiracy and all these memes that tend to be
the old pyramid, the idea of the organization chart run by a secret government. I mean, McLuhan did say in Gutenberg Galaxy that Big Brother went inside, went invisible, started to do tetrad management with the new post-visual environments. It wasn't strutting around like Hitler did, occupying territory. It moved into solar management.
Yes, and when we see this landscape, it's hard to think about epiphanies or ascension or the type of insights you are gaining.
Yes, that is accurate.
But you're in paradise. You're in Maui.
Yes. So you're discovering the interior landscape and having great fun reading the essays by McLuhan in the late 40s, early 50s. Fantastic essays.
Yes, because one might think he was just an English professor writing about literature, but he was doing much more as he's exploring the whole evolution of how man express language and how it's transmitted with different types of media.
Yeah, it's like in the Gutenberg Galaxy, the poet would come up with a major vision showing the ambiguity of language, but it would point to some kind of inspiriting effect. Well, McLuhan was moving past the Gutenberg environment to the global theater of mixed corporate media and showing the inspiriting vision and the ecology within it.
Yes, and here's a quote from the book. She says, "Art is a means of giving us new awareness through an intensification of our sensory life. And media has that effect even thousand times. It's this sensory life, this opening of the doors of perception is even stronger with media. As we
Yeah, could you read that sentence again about art?
Yeah, art is a means of giving. Art is a mean. I wrote it very fast. Art is a means of giving us new awareness through an intensification of our sensory life.
Intensification is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is that a quote from McLuhan?
Yes. Yes. I think it's at the very beginning. He's explaining that he was traveling in England, and as he was traveling, he had a book of poems, and he had the impression that book was written to make his experiences even more vivid as he's traveling.
Yeah, through the lake poets. He was doing 1932 with his friend Tom Esterbrook. They were traveling through the romantic landscape that Wordsworth and Coleridge and these nature artists, poets were talking about. I think they're called the lake poets. And he said the imagery he was engaging in that trip 2 years later when he goes to Cambridge. See, in 32, he's in the summer vacation. He goes back to Winnipeg and to finish up his University of Manitoba, whatever the name of the university was in Winnipeg. Then in 34, he goes to Cambridge. And he says in the first few weeks, he was shocked by a whole new view of poetry that countered what he thought he was doing in 1932 when he was biking around looking at the lake poetry. He's saying, I was living in the 19th century in 1932, but in a few weeks of I.A. Richards, the class of I.A. Richards and Lewis and these people at Cambridge, he was hoiked into the 20th century in poetry. It was a big shock for him.
Yes, and through these vivid experiences he had, he saw that as media replaced art,
we were creating a world of Wyndham Lewis of men without art, women without art.
Somehow that was affecting us also in the physicality. Like I think he said something about how television is affecting the brain. But you read something on the last payday in the due line that he says nobody's going to find, or they don't really see the real causes of, for example, a couple not talking to each other anymore.
Yeah, right.
The changes might be a metamorphosis, modification of their physicality, and the real cause might be, for example, that they're engaging new media, they have another frequencies or something else. He was sort of perceiving that.
The automobile was the mechanical bride. Now you had the electronic bride when people 50 were watching television, or the electronic groom. You know, their chemical body love relationship was being usurped by the new gadget, the new iPhone.
Yes, and as these medias have other frequencies, and I don't know, the radiation or how these things are really affecting us and the environment. I mean, we are in an ocean of Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Wi-Fi.
The Wi-Fi.
Okay, but see, this is obvious to people. Well, not everybody, but many people can understand McLuhan's vision today. What they don't see is that the new environment's always invisible. So the new environment is going to come in a totally different form, not in the technical landscape of media ecology that is taught in colleges now. That's the old form of invisible environment. The new invisible environment will be a surprising new technology that people don't notice. And that's exactly what iONic is, with our cold play and our RNA drops and living water and bread of life. We are the new technological environment, which is a form that no one anticipated, other than Scripture.
Yes, but I think he saw that words contain all the galaxies and all the landscapes.
Yes.
The words contain the visual too.
Well, when I was with him in 1975, we went up to, hopped on the streetcars and we were going up to St. Clair Avenue, where he was going to a acupuncturist, Don Gay. This is in May 1975. Don Gay becomes a good friend of Carolyn's like 15 years later. But anyways, on the subway, I'm mentioning to McLuhan that William Burroughs said that Marshall was a word analyst. And Marshall says to me, yes, that's accurate if you consider airplanes, bulldozers, and he names off all these huge environments as the content of the word.
Yes, and because now I'm in the point where I discover these things about the chemistries, and I'm really fascinated with that. And I see how the word will contain the frequency, and the frequencies will contain everything we see. And as Ion says, only the acoustic or the frequency is real. Not what you see is not real. Only the
Tonality.
what you hear is real. So,
Well, I end the McLuhan essay, McLuhan as Homeopathic Quadrophenia, with a quote from Croker. And it's something like, um, you never saw what you were looking at because you never heard what you were hearing. And he says something else beyond that, but that's the final quote. We're not living in a now anymore. The now is marketed by the Illuminati bitches out of Goldman Sachs. They're pretending there's a now. But there is no now because we never could, the chemical body can't keep up with what McLuhan calls living at the speed of light, which he says that the main discovery of the 21st century will be that we could not live at the speed of light. Humans were not meant to. But that's not true when you bring in the ionic. We make people able to live at the speed of light and the speed of thought. We have the solution.
yes, and that's what we are sort of trying to achieve with all these medias to increase the velocity of how we reach others at the speed of light, of how the communications become faster and faster, because we ourselves are becoming the light, the salt
And
and the
part of
light.
it's an escape. You look in the LaRouche quadrant, you'll see the movie, Steve McQueen movie, 1963, The Great Escape. We are also avoiding matching and direct communication. We want to make new technology go faster and faster so we can escape our interaction with other media or other people or other cultures. So it's both an implosion and a eccentrifugal force, as Zappa called it.
But I think this escape is really this trying to escape from space and time.
No, I call my quadrant the anthropomorphic physical. We are trying to establish an anthropomorphic physical, very difficult, and that leads to all kinds of frustrations and spin-offs, baroque spirals of panic, hysteria, schizophrenia, paranoia, and ecstasy. They're the spin-offs from our looking for ourselves in the android me, where we're trying to project an anthropomorphic situation. So what you said, those words are accurate, but I disagree by saying you must include my meanings, the expanded meanings of the anthropomorphic physical. So what was the sentence you said just a minute and a half ago?
That we're trying to escape from time and space.
Oh, yeah. So time and space is not that easy to visualize. We don't want to go back to the Newtonian time and space or the Gutenberg time and space. And many cultures want to go back to their version of time and space. And that's not going to happen. So ion comes forth, annihilating time and space and providing the original environment, which ion calls source energy.
Yes, but you have this insight that each medium of communication profoundly modifies humans, its outerings and the environment. Why, what would you, or how would you resume what you know about these chemistries and the interactions, for example, between the words, the chemistry, the environment, and the changes in the physical.
I would make an inventory, which is my book, Fatty Communions, an inventory of people, writers and thinkers getting the vision, the same vision that McLuhan had. And that was LaRouche and Thompson and Croker and Dr. Beater and Zappa and Krishnamurti. They all were seeing this dramatic post-human, parahuman situation and had different emotional responses, different genres of thought, philosophy, technique, and that's subsequently replayed by the android beam. Let me see if I can remember. LaRouche was replayed by Rush Limbaugh. McLuhan was replayed by William Gibson. Thompson was replayed by Shirley MacLaine and Deepak Chopra. Croker was replayed by George Bush Jr., the android beam looking like a chemical body. And Dobbs was replayed by Ion.
Oh! Wow.
Wow. I think we
That's
should end on that.
that's a happy ending. We cannot top that.
Yes, awesome.
Okay.